"Yes, King," he yelled, loud enough that the whole gym heard him. Darius, mid-curl, nearly dropped his weight. He'd seen plenty of people get fired up during workouts, but no one had ever shouted out something like that. And there he was, this guy who had to be new. Darius would have definitely noticed him before, slamming his weights down with a grin that radiated confidence. This was no average gym bro. Every move he made screamed power, from the way he held his weights to the way he let out that primal shout. There was something captivating about him. Darius couldn't help but chuckle. He was used to being one of the biggest guys in the gym, one of the ones others glanced at for form tips or just out of admiration. But this guy had a whole different energy. Like a magnet, Darius's attention kept getting pulled toward him, and he couldn't seem to focus on his own workout anymore. He tried his best to shake it off and kept lifting, but every time he sneaked a glance, the guy was still there, looking powerful, collected, and, yeah, a bit wild. He figured he'd let it go. After all, he wasn't about to get distracted by some guy, no matter how good he looked. But just as Darius was about to finish his set, he felt a presence next to him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of the guy's arm radiate even through the bustling noise and air conditioning of the gym. He turned, and there he was. Up close, the guy was even more imposing, and yet his smile had this laid-back charm. "Spot you?" the guy asked, nodding toward Darius's next barbell set. His voice was smooth, like he had all the time in the world. Darius was caught a bit off guard. He rarely took offers from strangers, especially because he could handle his own sets just fine. But something about this dude, something in the calm but challenging way he offered, made Darius pause. "Sure," he said, shrugging with a casual confidence he didn't quite feel. The guy introduced himself as Marcus, and from the moment he positioned himself for the spot, it was like he took charge. His hands hovered just right as Darius pushed up on the barbell, close enough to help, but far enough to let him know he had full control. And every time Darius pressed, Marcus would murmur, "Good. Push it." "You got this, King." The first time he heard it, he almost laughed. The term felt funny at first, but the way Marcus said it, it sounded right. Encouraging, but also, somehow, personal. Darius felt a weird spark every time he heard it. When Darius racked the barbell with a final, satisfying clang, Marcus clapped him on the shoulder, hand lingering just a bit longer than usual. "Told you," he said with a smirk. "You're stronger than you look." Darius grinned. "Stronger than I look? That's supposed to be a compliment?" They both laughed, and somehow, between shared reps, spotting sets, and trading protein shake recommendations, they ended up sticking together for the rest of their workout. Each rep was a mini competition, a silent challenge they both took seriously. Finally, after an intense session, they both leaned against the wall near the water fountain, catching their breath. "You're no joke, Marcus," Darius admitted, sipping from his water bottle, still trying to play it cool, even though he felt his heart beating faster for reasons that had nothing to do with the workout. Marcus shrugged, leaning in closer. "You're not too bad yourself," he said, "but I bet you're just as intense outside the gym." Darius raised an eyebrow. "Is that a challenge?" Marcus's smile widened. "Could be. You got any plans after this?" They both knew where this was going, and neither of them was in the mood to beat around the bush. They finished their session, showered, and before he knew it, Darius was sitting across from Marcus at a late-night diner, sipping coffee and talking about everything from workout routines to favorite shows. Darius wasn't used to opening up like this with someone he'd just met, but Marcus had a way of asking questions that made him want to talk. And even when he wasn't saying anything, just sitting there, listening intently, his gaze made Darius feel like the most interesting person in the room. Hours passed without either of them noticing, and as the clock neared midnight, Darius realized he didn't want the night to end. "This was cool," he said, trying to keep it casual. "I don't usually end my gym sessions like this." Marcus chuckled, that smooth laugh of his that seemed to echo, "Me neither, but we're both full of surprises, huh?" They both left the diner, and as they walked outside, Marcus hesitated, hands in his pockets, looking almost uncertain for the first time that night. "Listen," he said slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. "I usually don't say things like this right off the bat, but I'd like to see you again, not just at the gym." Darius felt his heart skip, but he kept his cool. "Yeah?" he replied, though he knew his answer immediately. "I think I'd like that too." They exchanged numbers, and for the next few weeks, their gym sessions became something to look forward to even more. Every lift, every spot, every shared glance across the room built this tension between them, something simmering under the surface, like an unspoken challenge. They both felt it, even if they didn't talk about it. Then, one evening, it reached a breaking point. Darius was working on a heavy set, one he'd been pushing himself on for weeks. Marcus was there, spotting him, hands hovering close, eyes locked onto his with that same intense gaze. As Darius pushed through the final rep, teeth gritted, Marcus leaned in, close enough that Darius could feel his breath. "Push it, King," Marcus murmured, voice low, almost a growl. The words sent a jolt through Darius, and with a final burst of strength, he completed the rep, racking the bar with a loud clank. He lay back on the bench, catching his breath, adrenaline still coursing through him. Marcus reached down, offering his hand to help him up, and as Darius grabbed it, he felt a pull, a magnetic force stronger than any lift. Without thinking, without hesitating, he held onto Marcus's hand just a second longer than necessary, and in that moment, the unspoken tension finally broke. Marcus didn't let go either. Instead, he pulled Darius closer, his intense gaze flickering down for just a moment. "Let's get out of here," Marcus said, voice husky, barely above a whisper. Darius's heart raced, and he nodded, not needing to say anything. They left the gym together, not bothering with formalities, barely saying a word as they drove back to Darius's place, the silence between them thick with anticipation. And when they got there, it was like the intensity they'd been building in the gym spilled over, raw and electric. Hours melted away, and for the first time in a long time, Darius felt truly seen, truly challenged, and somehow truly understood. Marcus wasn't just a gym buddy or some guy who could spot him on heavy days. He was more. In the morning, as they lay side by side, exhausted but content, Darius felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of peace. They spent the next weeks falling into an easy rhythm. Their bond deepened, becoming more than just a shared workout routine or late-night diner dates. They had each other's backs, in and out of the gym, pushing each other to grow, not just in strength, but in life. And every time they worked out, every time Marcus would call him king, with that teasing smirk, Darius would feel a sense of pride, not just in himself, but in what they had together. Months passed, and soon they were known around the gym as a duo. People noticed their connection, the way they supported each other, the way they had each other's backs in every way. And one evening, after a particularly intense session, Marcus looked at Darius with that familiar smirk, his gaze softening. "Darius," he said, voice low, almost shy. You're my king too, and I don't just mean in the gym." Darius felt a lump in his throat, but he managed a smile, pulling Marcus close. "Right back at you," he replied, voice full of gratitude and warmth. And with that, The gym was no longer just a place for lifting weights. It was where they'd found each other, where they'd built something strong, unbreakable, and uniquely their own. A bond that would only grow stronger with each rep, each challenge, and each moment they shared, both inside and outside those gym doors.